Hello, today I'll be commentating a recent route I did for FRLG Plus with Magikarp, which obviously evolves into Gyarados. I'm going to do commentary because this room is on offline, and also the uh, video has a bunch of resets at the beginning. So rather than edit the resets out, I thought I might as well just do some commentary and explain how this run works. It's fairly straightforward, but just so that there's a nice clean video. So let's get this started here. So based on what I just said earlier, that there are a bunch of resets, I do the RNG manipulation at the beginning for the starter. This is because you do use the Squirtle, which is the starter we use for this. I use it for quite a large section of the run, and so I just opted to go with the good stats. It probably could be done with any old Squirtle, but you run into a bit of risk owing to having potentially low speed or low special attack and having to take a few extra turns. So I opted to just do the manipulation. It's not terribly annoying to do it, but sometimes you are sitting around doing resets. This run was kind of interesting. I'd done about 8 or 9 resets prior to this, and this one I accidentally opened the bag. The bag actually shifts the RNG a little bit. I don't actually remember exactly how many frames you have to change your offset by, but I think I randomly put 3 in, and did the rest of the manip as normal, and I thought I would probably miss this manip just because it was I'd done that little offset incorrectly. But as you'll see, I actually ended up hitting the manips. That actually worked out quite well. Also, another thing to point out is I do default names again. I think for my character, the starter Pokemon, and the rival. So you can see some really interesting player names. I've seen probably 20 different names that if you just give your character any old name. So we see Kiko here. As normal, we go into the key system settings, change the difficulty to easy and the EXP multiplier to 2 to do the run, and away we go. So nothing too crazy here. I think I probably explained this on prior commentary videos. We just spam tackle on the rival, and this fight goes exactly the same. For whatever reason, the difficulty mode doesn't, the difficulty setting, the level drop doesn't apply to the starter of the rival on the first fight. So we end up with pretty much the same fight as normal. Obviously getting level 7 at the end, which is super nice, because Bubble is a good move to have for both weakening the HM friends we catch, as well as not needing to fight any extra optionals, or optional Pokemon specifically. Gonna grab the PC potion here. I don't normally grab this for Squirtle runs, I believe, because you end up not needing to heal that much. But for this run, because I'm going to be getting the Magikarp later, and Magikarp is literally useless for the first 12, 15 levels or so that you have it before it evolves, you have to swap train on a bunch of fights, and therefore you end up healing a lot more than you normally would. So I opted to pick up all the extra potions that are on the ground in this run. Turns out, we'll see later that wasn't needed. I got really, really lucky in terms of damage taken, and probably not even lucky. I probably just figured out the best way to handle a bunch of the fights where you swap and doing healing and such. So could save a bit of time by cutting out a few more of those extra potions on the ground. You also see on the bottom left, I don't have my Squirtle stats popped up here. I could technically show both Squirtle and Magikarp's IVs, but I didn't bother because that would mean having to make another layout. So I decided to just have the a separate layout, just to use the same layout for both the runs that use the Gen 3 starter program as well as runs that use, in this case, Pokemon Ranger, which is a really nice tool for routing and for doing routes, created by Corvame, which I ended up actually making a route recently, which is like an interactive, effectively is an interactive guide for Manipulus runs, or even Fire Red Leaf Green runs where you do have some variability in your stats. It'll tell you based on the IVs you enter, or you determine based on the stats you see on level up, what to do in specific fights and what the damage rules are. In this case, I'm just using the IV tracker portion. I don't actually have an interactive guide for this, because this is literally a meme that probably only I'm ever going to run. So there's no point in making an entire route based on this. Route 1, pretty much standard. Typical to get a breakout, at least one breakout on those 2 catches. But getting those at least one of those catches is nice because it saves the catch tutorial. Very rare to not get any, but there have been some cases where I've actually, not recently, but I've actually had to camp for an encounter on that route to avoid the catch tutorial. A little bit of tentative movement around that spinner, or that trainer. I actually hit that trainer on a previous run. So the previous run that I'm comparing to did hit that bug catcher, and it was very slow. And my controller's starting to not function particularly well, so I opted to play that a little bit safely. That looked like it could have been a 1% encounter there between those 2 encounters, but you run really fast, so maybe I'm off by a little bit. But I believe in the forest, it's every 6 or 7 encounters. You can you have almost 100% immunity from encounters on the subsequent 6 or 7 tiles after an encounter or a fight. So getting encounter there is known as a 1% encounter. I don't know if that was actually one. I'd have to go back and check, but it looked really close. Weedle here, just pretty much spam bubble. The idea here is to, in general with Squirtle, is to try to get Torrent off of this fight, either using poison. In this run, I actually am going to take a little bit of poison damage, but it's not super critical because you end up being higher level for the fights in Brock's gym. This is particularly important for the any % run that uses Squirtle the whole way, which is the current fastest route in this game, because you don't fight Liam and you only fight Brock, and you need to be very careful to not be in Rock Tomb range after level up. However, for this fight here with Liam, you pretty much only need Torrent for Geodude, because the Geodude is a 50-50 range without Torrent, so obviously missing that range would be kind of bad. And you just need to be able to survive 1 hit from the Sandshrew, because as you'll see here, Torrent Bubble does 75 to 80% each health to or damage to Sandshrew, which seems to suggest that non-Torrent Bubble is a guaranteed 2-hit. I have to calculate that, but you pretty much don't need to worry about being in Torrent, I believe, for that Sandshrew. And then for Brock coming up here, you end up one-hitting the Geodude with Bubble, and I believe that is guaranteed without Torrent as well. And then at level 13, you learn Water Gun, which guarantees the kill on Onix. You don't have to worry about any damage ranges. So as long as you're not super low HP, I mean, if you take a hit from, I guess if you take a hit from the Sandshrew, you might be in a situation where you actually are in Rock Tomb range from the Onix, but then you would just heal accordingly. But I haven't really done the math on this. I kind of whipped this route together really quickly, and I did all the damage rolls and everything for the Gyarados portion of the run, but not for the Squirtle, because the Squirtle portion changes slightly because you don't normally fight Liam. But it's not too bad. Okay, so pretty nice time save there just because I didn't hit the optional. I also ended up getting poisoned on the optional fight and having to use the antidote early. Got poisoned again on Sammy and had to take a center, so there's a huge time loss there on my previous run. Shopping here, I'm going to spend most of my money. I need to save a little bit of money in order to buy Magikarp. because the trainers on Route 3 don't give enough money alone to buy Magikarp, so I left about 200 on the table there. And here I buy some potions, antidotes, paralyzed heals, awakenings, pretty much the usual. Could have maybe delayed some of the those healing items like paralyzed heals till later. And I also bought 4 repels because I do pick up the revive. I am fairly certain the revive is not really necessary for this run. There's like one fight that it's useful, and that's Rival 2. But I don't think it's really useful other than that, so it might be more optimal to just buy more potions or buy more status items and not buy that extra repel. Buying only 2 of each of those status items is not very much, especially paralyzed heals. You seem to get paralyzed a lot, even awakenings. 2 isn't really enough, so I think it'd be more optimal to buy more of those instead of buying that 4th repel. So that's something that could be optimized slightly, but it's not a huge issue. The revive isn't too much of a detour to get. This route's pretty straightforward, just spam water gun on everything. Everything dies in one hit, you don't need torrent or anything like that, so we'll kind of just take a little break here from the commentary, and when I get to Magikarp, I'll jump back in and explain how I handled the Magikarp stats and whatnot. Okay, so here's where we buy Magikarp. I kind of do this a bit scuffed, but I am going to save for Magikarp here. So pretty much there's only one requirement for Magikarp. Magikarp cannot be minus attack nature. You probably could take like high IV minus attack, but I opted to just not even bother with it at all. And because of that, you're very likely to get a runnable Carp. This one ended up being mild, which is actually not a bad nature at all for Magikarp, because plus special attack is useful. In some cases. Minus defense isn't even that bad because Gyarados has Intimidate, which is obviously not very good for speedrun because it's very, very slow, but everything that you set up on pretty much has its attack lowered, and so being minus defense is not really a big deal at all. So that's totally fine. I'm not going to swap Magikarp to the top yet, but I am going to set my battle style to switch because I am going to do a lot of swap training. The way alt mains work in the normal PSR community, as well as in this game, we adopted the same rules. Is once you have your alt main, in this case the Magikarp, you have to use it in every battle where it can gain experience. And so, because Magikarp only knows Splash, I have to swap train on every single fight that I do from here on, or use the Gyarados as a solo battler. So it took a little bit of looking around to see what the best series of trainers to fight is. I figured out it was optimal just to not fight any optionals in Mount Moon. And in fact, I don't really fight any optionals at all in the entire run, except for one, which is required to get a specific item, which is going to be a little bit later. But here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to swap my Magikarp to the top and enter this rocket fight. So the way this is going to kind of work is I'm going to be checking my stats on every level up, almost every, at least the first couple levels. I can actually, will be able to look at my stats and narrow down my IVs. In some levels you don't really have any particularly good stats to narrow down. So it is going to be a bit slow because I'm actually going to be reading my stats really quickly and then trying to remember them and enter them into the ID tracker at the bottom. What's really great about this IV tracker is you can actually force it to be a specific nature by either by left clicking on the plus stat, so in this case special attack, to force it to be plus, and then shift left clicking on the minus stat, which is defense. I think in this particular case, when I entered my defense, the defense was IV was, or stat was only possible with a minus nature. So I ended up, it ended up forcing it that way, but I forced the special attack just to make things a little bit smoother. So yeah, this is pretty much just swap training, and as you can expect, Wartortle is going to take some damage as a result that he doesn't normally take, which is kind of an unfortunate side effect, but it's necessary for the run. So far the IVs are looking okay. It's not a fantastic Magikarp, but it's definitely serviceable. The defense is pretty low, which for a Fire Leaf Green run normally is very bad, but again, because of the Intimidate factor that Gyarados has, you don't have to worry too much about that. Even on fights where you have super effective moves used against you, which I think is only like one fight that you end up setting up on, which is very late in the run. So even though there's a lot of setup required to get Gyarados, it's a very, very safe route. It's probably as, if not safer, than Squirtle itself. But you just lose a lot of time doing the swap training. This is here I actually got an encounter. I believe Zubats might be able to outspeed Magikarp here. So what I opt to do is after I pick up the fossil, I actually just switch Magikarp off of the top slot so that I can run, so the repel is still active and I can run from encounters. Pick up an extra antidote here just in case I have any issues with the poison. So here I'm actually going to go grab Mega Kick. So in the normal vanilla route with Squirtle, we actually fight an optional in Mount Moon and then pick up the 2 candies before the rival fight, and evolve to a very specific level where you don't even need to get Mega Kick. You can actually just 2-hit the Bulbasaur with Bite, and that's literally the only spot. And I guess there's a few other areas later in the run, like all the Oddishes, you can bite those because you're such a high level, and that's really, really good for because Mega Kick's not a very reliable move. However, in this run, because I swapped experience with Magikarp, the Squirtle does not have, or Wartortle does not have as much experience, and therefore it's actually going to have a little bit harder time with the rival fight, and even Misty here as a result. So this this Staryu is never a 2-hit with Bite. I actually do make a small mistake here. I opt to go for the second bite. The first roll actually looked pretty good, but it's a very, very unlikely 2-hit range. But I get the crit there, which is really good. So that sort of makes up for that, but it is a bit slow. Obviously the big threat here is getting confused by Starmie, because, and Staryu even for that matter, because you're taking an extra hit from each of them. This Starmie dies in 2 hits, don't have to worry about there. The only issue is if I get a critical hit, that could be a serious problem. Alright, so that's Misty down. Pretty decently ahead of PB here. My first run was really, really bad, so it's pretty understandable that that would happen. I'm going to teach Water Pulse. This is an example of the run where having multi-use TMs is very useful. So once I use this Water Pulse TM, it's still in my inventory, and that'll come into play later. Because Water Pulse is really, really useful to have for the rival, as well as a good chunk of Nugget Bridge. The Water Pulse is actually not quite as useful in the Squirtle run, although it is taught no matter what, because it's just so much. It's a really great move to have, but you could technically get away without it for a little bit longer. Alright, so this fight's probably the worst fight in the run, aside from maybe Misty. It's pretty much the typical Rival 2 fight, but with the difference is that I'm actually taking more damage because I have to swap on every Pokemon, specifically the first two. Pidgeotto is very unlikely to use Sand Attack on Magikarp, so you're not likely to get it there, but got the flinch on the Pidgeotto, which is really solid. And didn't take too much damage as well. Swapping into Bulbasaur here, so Bulbasaur will always go for Vine Whip because it can kill Magikarp with it, I believe, so I will be taking at least one Vine Whip on this fight. And got a Sleep Powder Miss, which is very, very good, and hit Mega Kick, so really solid Bulbasaur as well. Here I make a small mistake. Because I'm on the Abra can't do any damage to Magikarp, or Wartortle for that matter. So I could have swapped here and then healed Wartortle on the Abra, but I backed out and kind of flubbed that. But it's not a huge deal. But this is a good place to heal Wartortle because Wartortle will see a little more damage on Nugget Bridge, and we all want to make sure not to heal as little as possible on menus outside of battle. Because if you're going in the menu just to heal, that's quite a bit slower than just taking an extra turn in battle. So Wartortle doesn't take any damage actually for the rest of this fight. It's pretty much full HP for Nugget Bridge, which ends up being pretty key. It's very unlikely to need to heal from here, unless you get statused. But here that the level ups for Magikarp are going to start to slow down quite a bit because the Pokemon are very low level, and so it's gonna. I only need to gain 4 more levels from here. I have 2 rare candies, so I'll be using the 2 rare candies once I hit level 18 to evolve. But from here, nothing too much terribly exciting is going to be happening until we get to Hiker Knob, which is the last trainer I'm going to fight for with the swap train. And so because of that, I'm just going to step away from commentary a little bit, and you can enjoy the music, and I'll be back once we get closer to Gyarados. Okay, last fight before get Gyarados. So luckily here I've not seen any status like confusion or poison. Those are the two main ones. So Wartortle is actually in really good health. It is possible for Wartortle to need to heal here, but it's pretty unlikely. You need to get criticaled by probably 2 Pokemon here, or get hit by all 4. But I'm fighting Knob because I want to grab the Secret Power TM, which is up above. So I will be fighting Camper Flint as well. But with Camper Flint, I'll be using Gyarados. So after the Knob fight itself, I will hit level 18, and then Magikarp will receive 2 rare candies to get to level 20, where it becomes substantially better. I looked at the base stat comparison between the two, and I didn't really realize how horrible Magikarp was and how amazing Gyarados is. It's actually pretty crazy. The funny thing is the speed actually only goes up a tiny bit, but everything else just improves dramatically. So here I'm going to set my battle style back to set, and also use 2 rare candies on Magikarp. I think this is where I check my last couple stats for the IVs, and then now I know what my IVs are. So I have 29 HP, which is pretty good. It's nice to have more HP. 24 attack, which is pretty good. Ideally, you want to have a plus attack nature with like high IV, but this is totally fine. Defense is 3, which is a little low, but it's not too bad because of the Intimidate thing. Special attack is 15 on a plus nature, which ends up pretty decent for this fight coming up here specifically. Special defense is 15 and speed is 16. All these stats are more than good enough to get a good run. So here we see Gyarados and we see Intimidate, how slow it is. This first Rattata is a damage range with Bite. You kind of need to have really good special attack. Unfortunately, Gyarados has really bad special attack. It has base 60 special attack compared to 125 physical attack. So even though it's going to get stabbed from water moves, it's not actually going to get too much of a benefit from those moves, just because of the special attack stat being low. But I am going to teach 2 moves here. I'm going to teach Water Pulse into slot 4, and then I'm also going to teach Secret Power, which is a 70 power physical move. And that's going to be my sort of bread and butter move for the next probably half an hour at least of the run. So heading into these fights here, just going to spam Secret Power most of the time and decimate everything. Not much to say. Don't need to worry about swap training anymore, but there is going to be obviously a little bit of time loss from the Intimidate. I haven't really quantified exactly how much Intimidate loses over the course of a run, but I'll do that at some point because it'd be very interesting to see. Because this alt main, even though Gyarados is really strong, it's probably the strongest alt main in terms of base stat total that has been used in a run of this game. The amount of setup that's needed to get to Gyarados, as well as the Intimidate text, really drains a lot of time, bleeds a lot of time, and Gyarados is not nearly as fast as some of the other options that I've looked at, unfortunately. But it is an interesting run, and it is fun to kind of just stop the game once you get to the point where you have Gyarados. I'm just going to pull up a quick comparison here to the Squirtle run and see how the times compare after Bill. So Bill is the 32:20 for... I don't have a Bill split for Squirtle on my run, but 3220. I can get an approximate comparison here when I pull up. My run here, but just give me one second here. Yeah, so 22:30. So almost 10 minutes slower behind Squirtle at this point. I am going to bleed a little bit more time as well. The Squirtle run ends up being about 20 minutes, or 25 minutes, or no, 15 minutes faster. This isn't a little bit of an unfortunate circumstance. I actually end up running into this Butterfree, which only has status moves, so I do have to heal paralysis. I do get a bit of extra experience, which isn't super helpful, but it does. It actually results in another mistake later, which we'll get to. Because paralyzed heals are a little bit low, and so having to use one there on a fight, which I don't normally do, which is kind of awkward. Camper Jeff here, not too big of a deal. I do actually hit 23, which is a nice level to reach, but it doesn't really help too much in the next fight. But normally you're not this high level, obviously, because of the optional. So heading off to the SS Anne. I went shopping there for some super potions and some repels. It's conceivable that you could skip this mart and buy the extra repels in pewter and then not have super potions, and you do end up getting super potions in Celadon later. But I opted to include this mart just for a little bit of extra safety, but this is something that could be routed out in the future if I was to do another run of this, which is unlikely. This rival fight's a little bit slow just because I have to hit up pretty much 3 out of 4 Pokemon here. Combination of Bite and Secret Power on the first 2 because of flinch chance, which I get on the Eradicate. Could probably have gone into Water Pulse on the Eradicate turn 2 there, but that's okay. This Kadabra can outspeed if you have minus speed nature. Don't have to worry about that. And I use Bite. Bite's actually a damage range here. In this particular case, it's a 12 and 16 range with my special attack, although I was a higher level, I believe, 24. I don't think you're normally 24, so it's probably a little bit better than that. I ended up calculating the Bite range after the run, but Secret Power is definitely the better play there. But Secret Power PP is a little bit tight. In this particular run, it's not, because I end up taking the bed heal after the rival fight. But I did do a quick reroute where I pick up an Ether and skip the bed heal and use Ether on Secret Power instead, which is a little bit faster. The PP management's a little bit tighter though. I teach Dig and Cut. Dig is just nice because it's not super slow to use Dig, and a lot of the times going into your bag is slow, and your different spots in your bag each time, so it's just overall. And the money, of course, to buy escape ropes. So in this particular run, because of text being instant and not needing to go into do as many menus as you normally would, having Dig is a minimal time loss at best. I taught Dig first because I want Dig to be above Cut in the moves, because then I can actually select it a lot easier in the overworld. If I'd caught a late Rattata, like say on Route 4, I would have taught Dig first. No, Cut first, and then wrote over Tackle with Dig. So that Dig would be in the top slot. Okay, so here's something I do that's also done in Butterfree %, is I actually skip Surge for now and go to Rock Tunnel. At this point in the run, Gyarados cannot one-hit Raichu, and Raichu obviously has Shockwave, which would do a number on Gyarados for sure. So I didn't even calculate any damage rolls from that Shockwave. I assume it would do a large chunk of damage. And even if it didn't kill with Shockwave, it would probably go for Double Team, and then you're probably just screwed at that point because of potentially missing. So I have to delay Surge and fight him later when Gyarados is a bit more powerful. The lack of experience from the Surge Gym isn't a huge factor anyway, because Gyarados has really high stats. So heading into this route, here's where I make a small mistake. So at level 25, Gyarados learns Dragon Rage, and Dragon Rage is actually not even useful as a one-hit KO move because most Pokemon from here on do not have 40 HP. But I did remember that at least one Pokemon on this fight has exactly 40 HP, or just below 40 HP. So I guessed it was Oddish, which is correct, but then I thought that the Bellsprout also had 40 HP, and I used Dragon Rage on the Bellsprout. The Bellsprout has a little bit more than 40, so I ended up getting put to sleep and ended up using my last Awakening. And got Wrapped, which is a little bit of extra text. So the correct play there would have been a Secret Power, but that's something that normally doesn't happen. You normally hit 25 after this fight and not in the fight itself. Talked a little bit how spinners, you can kind of just whiz by them on the bike as long as you time it perfectly. You don't have to do a bag manip. That's an example of that there. And I'm going to use Water Pulse when possible here. Obviously, I'm going to need to use it on the rock Pokemon coming up in Rock Tunnel. But Water Pulse is nice because of it's a good coverage move and good utility move that can knock out some of the weaker Pokemon. So again, Gyarados does not have good special attack, but it is good enough to knock out those bugs, for example. Picked up the Chesto Berry because I don't have any Awakenings left, and there is a chance to get put to sleep on Martha coming up. And into Rock Tunnel. So here I would use the Ether on Secret Power if I skipped the Bed Heal and picked up the Ether. I haven't used up fully all 20 Secret Powers at this point, so this is a good spot to use it on a menu. And these first three fights have pokes that are 2-shots. These slow pokes always are a 2-hit with Bite, and I use Dragon Rage turn 2 because Dragon Rage is not super effective, so there's no extra text, and also Dragon Rage is just a good move if you need to burn PP, because it's not used too often, but it saves me having to use extra Secret Powers or Water Pulses, which end up being quite tight overall in this section up until the Pokemon Tower. So Martha here, Oddish is a pretty much, it's always a damage range at the very, very best case scenario. In this particular case, I go for Secret Power because it is, I think, a 5 and 16 range. Yeah. And it could also flinch, but the other option is to use Bite into Dragon Rage. And then Bulbasaur is a guaranteed, unless you have extremely low attack. For this run, I do not take minus attack again. I only take neutral or plus attack. Here's where we start using Water Pulse, because that's obviously the best move. There's going to be one exception where I do not use Water Pulse on Rock-type Pokemon, and it is on Hiker Oliver's Onixes. So these Onixes have exactly 40 HP. So they die to Dragon Rage. just did a quick comparison to Butterfree. So Butterfree is about 10 minutes faster than... Actually, that's not correct. Because you do Misty late with this route. But when we get out of Rock Tunnel, that'll be a good comparison point between the Butterfree run, which also skips Surge, and is the next slowest alt main. Or the one that's fat, the only one that's the second slowest alt main, I should say. But the rest of these fights are pretty chill, just spam one-hit KO moves, and dodge the trainers and spinners, etc. So I'll hop back in, I'll mute for this time being until we get out of Rock Tunnel. Okay, out of Rock Tunnel in a mid-45. This is about 5 minutes slower than Butterfree at this point in the run. The swap training itself is actually very, very slow, but 5 minutes is not even that bad. I'm going to pick up here, I'm going to pick up the return TM. Now, unfortunately, in most runs of Fire Red Leaf Green and Fire Red Leaf Green Plus, if you're teaching return, for example, to the Venusaur, on the Venusaur route, even in vanilla, return is stronger than Secret Power here. However, because Gyarados has the slow EXP curve, which I didn't mention earlier, it levels pretty slow compared to some of the other alt mains. And yeah, that's the main reason. Actually, just hasn't leveled as much. It actually, return is significantly weaker than Secret Power here. I also haven't used too many candies on it either. I'm saving a lot of the candies. So, it's beneficial to just leave the return teach until later on a separate menu. Into the hideout. So, nothing too much to worry about here. This, these first few fights are all pretty straightforward. I am switching to Water Pulse because Secret Power PP is actually very tight, and so I need to use Water Pulse where possible to conserve Secret Power PP. I end up running out of Secret Power or Water Pulse PP exactly. And Secret Power PP, I have like only 2 or 3 left at the end of the day, so I end up, this PP management works out really nicely for this run. Fighting the Lift Key guy, this fight's obviously pretty straightforward. However, the Coughing can be arranged with a low attack, and with low minus special attack, the Zubat is arranged with Water Pulse. But you have to get pretty unlucky to get those kinds of stats. Just gonna pick up this rare candy, and then head over to the last 3 fights of the hideout. So unfortunately, some of these fights coming up here, I have to use Water Pulse as a super effective move because, one, because I'm low on Secret Powers, two, because of Intimidate and especially from the Ekans here, and three, because Gyarados' special attack is so low that I can't use Bite on the Sandshrews. It just doesn't kill, so I have to use the Water Pulse. Whereas with Blastoise, Blastoise has base 85 special attack, I believe, compared to 60 for Gyarados. So it actually, and it's a higher level as well. So Bite does significantly more from Blastoise. This Arbok here is a 2-hit. We have to do Bite plus Dragon Rage. There's no move that will kill it in one hit. But luckily I get the flinch on Arbok. So that's really smooth, and we're off to Giovanni. So Giovanni can be quite scary if you have low HP. Unfortunately, the Intimidate only affects the Onix, which you one-hit anyway, and the Kangaskhan, which is the scary Pokemon, comes last, and is the one that deals damage. So having low HP here is kind of bad. So minus defense can be quite an issue. Could potentially be an issue here, but it's not a huge deal because in this particular run, that is because I get Bite crit, which isn't terrible, and then a single Mega Punch, which is totally fine. Doing a quick comparison to Butterfree here. Made up a lot of time on Butterfree, only about a minute behind the Butterfree run after Giovanni won. Actually, that's not accurate at all because Butterfree fought Surge. Never mind. So this is not really a good comparison time point. So Butterfree actually ends up fighting Surge as soon as it gets to Celadon. I thought that Gyarados was that didn't seem right that Gyarados would make up that much time at this point, but that's okay. Heading to the shopping, so we don't actually have to buy too much here because, as you'll see later, Gyarados learns a very nifty move that's used instead of X items. So I'm going to buy some X attacks, some X specials, and some guard specs. Actually, guard spec ends up being the item I buy the most, which is kind of an interesting fact. With really low attack, I would buy an extra X attack. With really high attack, I'd buy less X attacks. If I had really low minus speed, I would buy an X speed as well. And I would buy more X specials if I had either very low special attack or very high special attack. And then for shopping, I buy a few extra super potions and some super repels. So I buy enough super repels that I can just repel and renew repels for the rest of the run because there's the later gen repels in this game which prompt you to renew them instead of you having to do a separate menu. So it's just beneficial to have to do that rather than do an extra menu each time you want to repel. I also have a bit extra money because the money route assumes you buy all the extra X items with if you have the low stats. So I can use that little bit of extra money I have to buy a few extra status healing items. After grabbing Fly, off to Vermilion because I need to get Fly. I can actually blitz past that Butterfree trainer because I already fought him. That's a little bit of a time save there. I usually have to take that really slow because of the bike is very hard to control and do tight turns. So into Surge's Gym. This cans puzzle in this run was not particularly great. I ended up having to check a lot of cans. So here's where I'm going to teach Return. I have to teach Fly to my bird anyway. And at this point in the run, very shortly, Return is going to end up being stronger. I think it already actually might be as strong as Secret Power. So it's totally useful to teach it here, and Dragon Rage isn't useful too much from here on. So I opt to teach it here. And then the fights in this gym are very straightforward. Just Secret Power 1 hits everything. I don't need to worry. Secret Power is not contact, so I don't have to worry about static. Because 3 of the 4 mons in this gym have static. At least the mandatory fights. I don't know about the spinners. So finally get my first can, which ends up being a corner can, which is actually not bad because that's a 50-50 shot to select the correct second can. Unfortunately, I believe I select the wrong can here. Yeah, so I have to reset that. Okay, into Surge. So this fight's very easy. Secret Power times 3. Nice and clean. Definitely could save a bit more time on the split because of cans, but that's not something that you really want to be grinding. Quick menu here. I'm going to toss the Nugget and the Moonstone and Repel. And tossing those 2 items just moves the X items up to the top of my bag, which is nice. Less scrolling. And Repels will be renewed for the remainder of the run. I have exactly enough to get through Victory Road from here if I refresh them. Okay, rival fight here. So this fight, you could technically get away without your guard specking, because you only have to set up 1x attack on the Pidgeotto. However, the remaining Pokemon in this fight have 2 of them have Intimidate. And so what the guard spec does is it not only stops sand attack from Pidgeotto, but also blocks the Intimidates from both the rival's Gyarados as well as the rival's Growlithe, which allows me to one-hit everything. Here we see a small mistake. I thought Return was in slot 3. It was actually in slot 4 because I had moved Bite. So here I end up juggling moves like crazy. It's not the first time I'm going to be juggling my moves around a little bit. This is something I didn't really finalize all that well in terms of which slots are the most optimal for all my moves. That's something I'll probably quickly add to the notes. I don't plan on doing any more runs of this, but definitely will just add those last few items to the notes in case someone wants to do a run. Definitely want to make sure there's a complete set of notes out there in case anyone wants to try this. Tower is pretty straightforward. Just gonna Bagman it past her, and then also take the pad heal. Don't have to worry about holding on a torrent or anything like that, so the pad heal is obviously nice. Also, I'm extremely low on Secret Power PP, as well as Water Pulses, I believe, so get those refreshed, and into these fights. This Haunter, you pretty much need plus special attack to guarantee the one hit with Water Pulse. Otherwise, you have to bite. And these Ghastlies are one hits as well. Marowak there is almost always a guaranteed 2-hit with Water Pulse. In that particular case, I think I could have used Bite, but because of the plus special attack nature. But no matter, with really low special attack on a minus nature, I do take even 0 special attack IV on a minus nature, because it's not terribly important as a stat, but it would be a damage range to hit there. This Golbat is a range as well. I believe I was higher level than I normally would be here because of that extra experience from the Butterfree. But there it's a 13 and 16 range with return. But the extra level up, which the level up itself would boost happiness, and also being a higher level means you do more damage. So that might have been a guaranteed one-hit KO there on the Golbat. Coughing's a range with low attack, but otherwise these fights are pretty straightforward, so we'll just listen to the music here and check back in once I get the Pokeflute. Okay, so once I have the Pokeflute here, do a quick menu. I'm actually going to use all the rare candies I have so far. And using the rare candies here sets me up really nicely for both Erica's gym as well as Koga coming up as well. Do not teach Hydro Pump. I will be getting Surf very shortly. So Surf is more than good enough for the run. Do a quick comparison to Butterfree after Flute Split. So Butterfree had a 55-53 Flute, which is about 4.5 minutes faster than Gyarados currently. But that also accounts for having already beaten Erica as well, so not really a good comparison. So I think after we get through this Erica split, that'll be a good comparative spot to compare the two. Erica's gym is pretty straightforward. First two fights just use Bite. I believe you probably could use Secret Power on the Execute, so that's something I should probably look into. Can't recall if Secret Power PP is limited at this point, but anyway. So Erica here, you can actually do this fight without an X attack if you have really good attack. But you have to use the X attack at some point. If you have extremely low attack, you have to use it on the Victory Bell and then have to heal Paralysis. My attack is good enough that I can skip it and then set up on the Tangela instead. And the Tangela is pretty harmless, it doesn't really do a whole lot. It does have Poison Powder, which can be quite trolly. But got Ingrain there. And then you can one-hit the Vileplume. So about 7 minutes behind Butterfree at this point, or so. So now that I have the Pokeflute and I have... I believe Erica allows me to use Strength as well. I believe, yeah, it's her badge that allows you to use Strength, and that's quite nifty to have later on, because I am going to be using Strength a little bit earlier than normal in this run. But yeah, just going to dodge these bikers and pick up the items that you typically grab, the candy, the elixir, and then head to Safari Zone pick up the usual items there, and I'll come back in on commentary once we get into Koga's gym. Alright, so got Surf and teaching it right away to Gyarados. I'll be using it in Koga's gym. And I'm doing it on this menu specifically. So in vanilla we would teach Surf on a bag manip in Koga's gym, but because I can run indoors, I will be doing the run to walk on the 2 spinners here. So run to walk, effectively running forces them to look in one direction, and then when they're temporarily locked in that direction, you can just walk past them. And then start running again once you're past them. So that's faster than doing the bag manip and then teaching the move. I'm already going into my menu to use Fly anyway, so it makes sense to teach Surf there. This fight, not too bad, just spam Secret Power. Drowsy doesn't have very good special or physical defense, and neither does Kadabra, so don't have to worry there. The Koga fight is probably one of the fights that could be reworked. I'm not a huge fan of how I roaded this, but anyway. So Surf the coughing turn 1. So Surf using those candies allows me to use Surf and one-hit the Gyarados here. It also gives me good ranges on the Muck. So depending on my attack, I can use a combination of Secret Power and Return. So with really high attack, you can Secret Power twice. With really low attack, you have to Return twice. In this case, I could use Secret Power and Return. I'm going to Guard Spec here on Coughing, because the Wheezing coming up has Smokescreen. And so now I'm in kind of a weird spot where I thought about healing, but then I opted not to heal and just go for the Surf crit. They went for Tackle, which could have missed, which would have been absolutely hilarious if it did. But rather than use the full restore and have to pick up another full restore later, I opted to just die and revive. Probably the best thing I could have done would have been just to use the full restore, because I ended up losing a little bit of time to having to revive. The revive is not really useful otherwise, and I already had it in my inventory, so I figured I might as well use it there. So that's something that could have been improved a little bit. With really low special attack, the Wheezing is a range with Surf ×2. And so you want to end up using Bite as an intermediate move there, which is awful. So I definitely need to look into a better way to do that fight. It's not really good the way it is currently. The Guard Spec seems almost pointless as well. I'm gonna go grab Strength from the Warden, and I'm actually gonna pick up the Warden candy here. I'm gonna put Strength on to Wartortle. So we saw in the Butterfree run, we put Strength and Surf onto Squirtle. A similar case here, but we're just gonna put Strength onto Wartortle and grab the Warden candy. This candy is going to be used in a little bit to set myself up for some good ranges on Blaine as well as on in Sylph and on Sabrina as well. So really nice to grab the Warden candy there. But it's possible you could route that out in the future. Heading to Cinnabar, holding down B in this game allows you to surf fast, which is nice. Although you don't surf a whole lot, so it's not used terribly often. Mansion is pretty standard mansion. Don't need to grab Blizzard. I thought about using Blizzard on Gyarados, but Gyarados has terrible special attack, so it actually is just better just to use physical moves for the rest of the run. And you do grab the Carbos here if you have specific speed IVs, either like really low speed, or even really high speed, you would grab it as well. But in this run, I do not need the Carbos. Grabbing the Elixir. So I actually only need one more Elixir for the entire run. I do still have the max Elixir in my inventory. And the Elixir is just a backup in case something weird happens later. Quick menu before I leave. I'm going to heal the full. I'm going to use those 2 extra candies I picked up. And candy to 47. And escape rope out of here, and off to Blaine's gym. So Blaine here, I do need to use 1 X item, so unfortunately Gyarados' bad special attack is a bit of a hindrance here. I will have to use an X special. The only thing that can really go wrong is if Growlithe burns you. Because you're using special attacks, it's not a huge deal. Because of the Intimidate, you're almost always going to see Fire Blast from Growlithe and not Takedown. You'd have to have really, really bad defense in conjunction with really high special defense, which I do not have for the Takedown to do more than Fire Blast. And the Arcanine is a damage range with very low special attack, like in the minus special attack range, so don't need to worry about any damage ranges there. And with that, answer the most important question in the run, which is saying no to Bill, and off to Sylphco. So with this, because I've already entered Saffron because I went to do late surge, I can go straight to Saffron, don't have to worry about going through the gatehouse. So on the Bagman up here, I used the Elixir. It's the only mandatory Elixir that in the run. It's just super nice having Secret Power and Return both having 20 PP, and also Having Surf, which is 15, you just have a lot of power points to play with. Alright, into Rival. This fight, again, will be guard specking, not only to prevent Feather Dance from dropping attack, but also to prevent Intimidate from having its effect on attack as well. I'll be using the... I was a bit of a flub, but I'll be using one X attack here. This is the last X attack of the run, which we'll see why in a second. And so this fight's pretty straightforward. The Pidgeot sees Intimidate from Gyarados and does very little damage. In this particular case, it could do a maximum of 16 damage per wing attack, barring crits, of course. So very, very easy setup here. The Gyarados can be arranged at +1, so if you have really low attack, you would set up to +2. So no big deal. This Cubone's a damage range with Secret Power in this particular case, but it's pretty favorable, so I opted to go for it. And then the Marowak is also damage range with Return, but you need to have very low attack for that, so not a threat here. Hit level 50, right for Giovanni too, and it learned the move Dragon Dance, which is a very nice move and means I don't need to use any more X attacks or X speeds in the entire run. And I don't really use that 4th move slot for anything anyway. Bite isn't terribly useful, don't really need to teach Blizzard. Don't get Hyper Beam. Gyarados learns Hyper Beam by level up later, don't really need that either. So Dragon Dance is nice. Here I completely flubbed my move positions. So this fight's interesting. If you have really high special attack, you can actually use X specials and surf everything. But if you don't have really high special attack, this is just awful. I don't know what I'm doing here. But otherwise, you go for the physical strat. If you have a really, really high physical attack, you only Dragon Dance once. If you have a really, really low attack, or lower attack, you would Dragon Dance twice, and then if you have sort of a mid-range set of attack IVs, you actually skip Dragon Dance altogether and just one-hit everything without setup. And, well, you don't one-hit everything. You two-hit the Kangaskhan and the Nidoqueen, but it's on average the same number of turns, and getting crits is obviously a time save. Heading into Sabrina's gym. This gym is very easy. If you have really, really low speed, you have to use Dragon Dance on Venomoth. Kind of like what you do with the vanilla Squirtle route, where you set up an X speed on the Venomoth if you're slower than Alakazam. But I have more than enough speed to just spam moves here. My attack is not quite good enough that I can Secret Power the Venomoth, so I do have to use Return on it, but otherwise it's a pretty smooth fight. More move swapping. Definitely need to fix that. And with that, that's Sabrina down. And we're going to head over to Giovanni's gym, and this is kind of the resident sleeper part of this run. I'm just going to spam either Return on the Black Belt or Surf on Giovanni and the Cool Trainer, and check back in once we head into Rival 6. Okay, that's 8 badges done. Currently, we have a good comparison spot to Butterfree, about 5 minutes behind Butterfree here. But Gyarados' late game is significantly better, so we're going to save a bit more time. I did heal. You probably don't need to heal there, but I opted to play a little bit safely. So this fight, need to set up 2 Dragon Dances, because I cannot one-hit the Gyarados at +1. So here I opt to Dragon Dance, Guard Spec, and then Dragon Dance. I believe I could still Guard Spec turn 1 and do this, but I'm worried about the Intimidates from both Growlithe and Gyarados here. So just need to confirm that as well. Obviously the Pidgeot has Feather Dance. Getting Feather Dance turn 1 would be pretty catastrophic. So again, the Guard Spec is blocking both Intimidate. Yeah, so in that particular case I did need to use... Actually, it's not strictly necessary. So it's actually quite interesting. I can one-hit the Gyarados... No, the Growlithe and the Alakazam at +1 with return, but the Venusaur is a 2-hit with return. So you could play a little bit safer and Guard Spec turn 1, and then have to 2-hit the Venusaur, which is an extra turn, or you play it a bit riskier with and risk a Feather Dance turn 1, and do the first Dragon Dance turn 1 into Guard Spec turn 2. Now this, obviously, if you can have really high attack, you can one-hit and you can kill the Gyarados at +1, you would just Guard Spec turn 1 anyway. So this would only apply if you have lower attack. But nothing too much exciting to talk about here, just going through the badge checks and then Victory Road. Lots of bonking in Victory Road with this fast bike, but I'll come back in once I get to Lorelei. back in here. Saved a bit of time on Butterfree. Butterfree has a pretty slow level 6, so saved a bit of time. This route, we do not need to bring any of the HM friends into the Elite Four. So deposit everyone here and buy some floor stores. Alright, so Lorelei is pretty straightforward. Just set up 4 to 5 Dragon Dances on Dugong. The Cloister is a damage range at +4. In this particular run, it's actually guaranteed, so I only have to set up to +4. So pretty much this fight is just don't get frozen and don't get hail, which is easier said than done. And didn't get hail, which is really good. So my previous run, I also did not get hail. Or I did get hail, rather. But as you'll see, hailless in this hack doesn't save too much time because of instant text. Only about 10 seconds, so. Alright, so Bruno, this fight is probably the only situation in the run where you'd see a rock-type move on Gyarados, which is super effective. And I think it's one of the only times that you actually see a super effective move on Gyarados at all. You don't see any electric moves on Gyarados. Rock is another type that is super effective. I think those are the only 2 types that are good against Gyarados, unless I'm missing something. So yeah, this Guard Spec turn 1, because Rock Tomb drew up speed. Although I guess perhaps because of Dragon Dance raising speed. Yeah, I know you would get the speed drop animation. That's slow, but technically you could avoid the Guard Spec altogether, and you'd still be able to kill everything, but it would just be slow. Here we set up to +2 or +3. You pretty much need really high plus attack to one-hit Machamp at +2. So in this case, I have to go to +3. But Ronix doesn't really do too much with Rock Tomb, even though it is super effective because of Intimidate. So. Even though I have very low defense, we're more than okay. Alright, so here, this Agatha fight is probably the biggest time loss of the run, other than that optional that I fought earlier. So this fight is set up 3x specials. You do need to set up 4 if you have low special attack. And do need to use a an X speed or a Dragon Dance. Now you use Dragon Dance if you outspeed this Gengar, but use an X speed if you're slower. So that's what the case where you'd buy the X speed. If you have really high speed, you skip the X speed altogether because you outspeed the second Gengar. This was a very unfortunate case where you don't really have any other play other than to just try to hit through a bunch of double teams, and I kept getting trolled by misses here, and getting poisoned multiple times. So this is the case where potentially having an extra elixir is necessary, because if you run out of Surf PP on this fight, you need to be able to restore Surf PP, because there's 2 Pokemon you need Surf for on the next 2 fights. But luckily I have enough Surf PP to get through here, but I do take quite a huge time loss because of that. But that was probably the biggest time loss of the whole run. Alright, so into Lance. Lance isn't terrible, because the Gyarados has... Or you intimidate the Gyarados, so it can't do a whole lot to you with Hyper Beam. But there is still a decent amount of setup here because he intimidates you. So it's there's kind of it's kind of a slowish fight no matter what way you do it. So here we Dragon Dance 4 to 5 times. You do 4 times if you have really high attack, because you're able to one-hit the Dragonite at +3. And you also have to set up an X special because the Aerodactyl does not die to Surf without an X special attack. So pretty easy setup. Could have maybe opted to heal there on that recharge turn, because Gyarados would be able to do more than the damage I've already taken. And this would potentially mean a no-heal situation before Champ, but that's okay. And then just spam return the rest of the way, other than the Surf on the Aerodactyl. And that's Lance down. And into the very last fight of the run. So we've actually saved quite a bit of time so far on Butterfree, and the Champ fight is significantly faster here for Gyarados, because you almost never have to heal. And this is actually a really interesting fight, just because of the Pidgeot does. So this fight, there are 2 pokes that have Intimidate, and you want to make sure you don't lose attack from them. So you Guard Spec turn 1 to avoid stand attack from Pidgeot, and then set up 4 Dragon Dances. You technically only need +3 to win this fight. But because the Intimidator, the last Intimidator, which is Arcanine, comes out after the Guard Spec expires, you have to... It's just faster and easier to just set up a second Guard Spec and Dragon Dance 4 times, and then just spam return. Because otherwise you'd be facing the Venusaur and the Arcanine at +2, and they both don't die at +2. So it might actually be comparable in terms of time. I'd have to look into that a little bit more, but this is just a good way to go about it. And as you can see, I got Sand Attack every turn except the last turn from Pidgeot. So this is a situation where Hyper Beam could be helpful, because you would just Hyper Beam the Venusaur potentially, but that's red down. That's a really smooth fight, really fast fight there, and that's GG. So this is the slowest alt main. It's been currently rotated. I'm not gonna do every single alt main. This is probably as slow as I'll look into potentially. We'll see how some of the other ones I'm looking into are, but this one definitely is very grindy to start, and Gyarados then just kind of stomps the rest of the game, but Intimidate really loses a lot of time as well, so nice to do a couple runs of this, but I think I'm probably not going to do too much more with Gyarados. It's just kind of slow. So that's GG's, and thanks for watching.